would be number one.
I love the fact that these teams are going to get awarded down the line, but of course across all phases with the points that they've been able to gain. MADBULLS looking fantastic so far with 697. It's awesome to see, you know, the big names from CIS coming in, like VIRTUS.PRO, like Na'Vi, showing up strong with the over 600 points. But likewise, great to see teams like PIONER, who have been ultra consistent, find that 4th spot just behind them on the cusp of being able to take over those teams that you expect to be at the top.
And I think it's very interesting because, like, we know VIRTUS.PRO, Na'Vi, these two teams in particular already had a lot of international experience, right? If it's playing the championships in the past, if it's playing actually also in PMGC, right? Some of the players already played PMGC. So I think it's normal it took a little bit longer for MADBULLS, PIONER, MUERTE to reach that point because they've never played against teams outside of their region, right? This is a first time for them. And see how much they've been able to improve over the course of 3 weeks. Sorry, yeah, but I mean 3 phases, should I say. It's very impressive. So I definitely like to see if they can try and continue that heading into the championship if they qualify. Of course, it seems like that's going to be the case in how they've been performing so far. But for the first time playing outside their region, this is a really, really good first start.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And particularly interesting beyond that, Jason, to see that Unicorns of Love is actually the only previous Western Europe team that is really keeping up with these guys, because the barrier between Unicorns of Love and Gamelord is extreme at the moment.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to mention too, because well, first of all, I'm surprised to see Gamelord and Eastern Stars here on the front page. But if you think about Unicorns of Love, they really hit their stride when it came to Phase 2. Now, imagine a world where they did that well in Phase 1. They would be looking maybe towards joint top, actually, and be the savior for Western Europe.
Or even, I mean, the first half of Phase 3 right now. I mean, they're only on 80 points, I think, gained so far, kind of in 12th position, joint 12th, in fact. So we need to see a little bit more of a kick-up from Unicorns of Love, and they could, in theory, be rivaling for, eventually, you know, some of those top points from all phases accumulated going into the final.
Yeah, well, as we obviously mentioned with Gamelord there on the front page, we believe they for sure now should have enough points to get into PMGC if you compare both seasons like we were talking about before. So that would be one of our representatives, but still yet to find more. And looking down the rest of the list here, remember, there is a cutoff of top 16 to get into the finals. And right now, Death Machine are currently sitting on that window, 345 points. I do wonder, the teams below them, how close they are. But I would imagine, though, Max, Death Machine with that first week performance most likely created a nice buffer.
It's so unfortunate because it was such a good start to the competition too, but now I already mentioned that Fine Picardo is happening, and we have the impression we just don't see them make into the late game anymore. They just lose players when mid-rotation, etc., especially on their drop locations, and then they just don't have an opportunity to even aim for that chicken dinner. So Miramar, sure, is one of the reasons why they've not been able to have as much success as they have in that first phase. But yeah, I think they just can't make it past the early phase, and it's just hurting them so much. And seeing how ARB also is not far behind them, if this fight keeps happening in Picardo, ARB might be able to actually leapfrog if they get, I don't know, like a team squad wipe, get all the loot in Picardo, then get a chance for a win. Yeah, things need to change for these bottom teams, and those two teams in particular.
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't get any easier if they can turn things around right now, because they're still going to be relatively low when it comes to their final points, and they still have to close the big gap here against the likes of those top dogs that we currently did have. But you know what? We talked about the top dogs, talked about his team, so what about his individual players here? I want to check in with our top 5 players when it comes to eliminations. And we can probably already guess who number 1's going to be, because you know what, this man, you don't need to know the difference between affect and effect. All you need to know is he puts up a limbs. But the rest of the lineup is quite surprising, I'd say. Well, at least some of them are a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at Effect and Zeresh mostly. It's those two guys have been consistent every single phase, right? You're looking at all the other players. Crypto, phase 2, big step up. Tixi, phase 2, big step up. I have the impression Old Boys also had a pretty significant step up in like all phases, but phase 2 was his biggest phase. But when you are always on top, all 3 phases back to back to back, that's why they're up there currently right now, I would say, Kalaris, and they're not moving, right? Effect is always top of the leaderboards for his team.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, the fact that these guys have been this consistent during all of it. I will say, though, really cool to see good old King Crypto doing his thing, you know? We see it in every single comment, in every single social media post that involves him, and it's he's been a really strong force for Unicorns of Love across the board, even being able to rival the likes of Tixi and Old Boy in this region, which I think is very impressive.
I'm still a Tixi supremacy believer, and he is going to dominate at the end. Tixi is there. He's one of my favorite players of the region over there, CIS in the past, so I want to see if he can try and contest once we head into the finals.
Well, Max, knowing your predictions, I don't know if I fared too well about your assumption of him being King Tixie, or not King Tixie, but reigning supreme here. But we'll see. You still have a chance to catch up. Kind of. We'll see. Anyways, but those 5 players you saw there in our race to MVP, not only are they putting up big limbs, put damage, but they're helping their team secure a lot of extra points into the finals by getting themselves high in the rankings. So let's check in that if we went to the finals right now, where the teams would currently stand in their overall points, because this is extremely important. Having leads, having any point lead when it gets to the finals is massive. We've seen so many times now where it's just 1, 2, 5 point difference between first and second place, and not to mention getting into the European regionals. But we can see here currently who is sitting at first. That's PIONER. Yeah,
there's a lot of extra points that have been able to be secured by the top teams. I mean, normally at the end of these tournaments, if you're in previous seasons, right, it wouldn't be that interesting. You pretty much know who's going to make in the finals. Now, in these last 3 days, you have a pretty big opportunity to get a pretty decent lead going into the finals itself. So MADBULLS, 74 points out of 80, that is, by the way. That's an insane ratio, just showing how consistent MADBULLS has been phase after phase after phase. So, yeah, if you're towards the bottom right now, your point is going to be in the next 3 days to try and close that gap, get as many points as possible, but not easy when they're the other teams on top.
Yeah, let's clarify as well really quickly on the predicted bonus side. This doesn't mean this is how many points they have in the finals. This is what we expect them to have if they continue at the pace they're at in this third and final phase. So this isn't necessarily MADBULLS 100% 74. This is what we expect them to have.
And a decent shift in those predicted numbers right now is definitely, when you look at someone like TJB, right? The fact that they, in theory, if they stay at the current state that they're at right now, would be bumping up that considerably, considering that they were far below the 10th spot at the moment, I think is potentially great for them.
Yeah, and speaking of TJB, I mean, that's a team that has massively stepped up that we've been waiting to see for over 2 phases now. And it finally got to happen here in the 3 days we've had of the third phase so far. So let's jump into their stats in particular, comparing their first 2 phases up against their third phase. And I mean, just the damage, the limbs, average points, everything.
A bump up of 400 damage average over the course of the first 2 phases, and now what's been happening in this third phase is absolutely mental for them, increasing, of course, the average limbs, placement points. Overall, this is a really good improvement. The one thing that does scare me a little bit right now is in this third phase, only GK First is really putting up the numbers for the team. When you're looking at, like, Xiao, XT, and just the rest of his team, they are way lower when it comes to fragging power, when it comes to average survival time, etc. It is the GK First show currently. If the team steps up around him, and he's already been up there for quite a while, it could work out. But as you said, Kalash, the question is, can they replicate this in the second part of this phase? If so, great, that's a lot of extra points in the finals. If they fall off, and there's a chance that might happen, and finals are going to be a bit tough.
Also, when you look at phase 3 so far for TJB, 2 Sandhawk games are carrying a boatload of their points coming out from it. It was the last 2 Sandhawks that they played, a first place with 14 eliminations, a second place with 18 eliminations, and then of course it wasn't stolen away from them by MUERTE, but it was taken away, the victory of them, by MUERTE, as we see here in the final moments of this with Striker in the distance. Now, that is a massive amount of points. Maybe they've found their groove on Sandhawk, which is always nice, considering they will be playing 4 of them throughout the next 3 days as a whole, but they still need to find more consistency on the other battlegrounds, I think, is fair to say, if they want to keep the position, hopefully, for the predictive numbers that we were looking at prior.
I have the impression on Sandhawk in particular, they found their groove in terms of also their drop location. The first 2 phases, they were all over the place, and MUERTE pushed them away from Same. Now they play the Eastern Coast. They did it, I think, 2 games in a row. Good amount of success, as you said, a lot of points from those 2 Sandhawks in particular. So, I mean, stick to it. Other battlegrounds, sure, they can improve on it, but it seems like Sandhawk, they potentially found a strat that works for them.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Kalaris, like they found some sort of groove and a majority of their points came from Sandhawk. And as Max mentioned before, GK First doing the heavy lifting, but we need to see more. We need to see more of this team. Even if they get into the finals, if they continue this pace, I'm not going to call them like a real contender until other people besides GK can help.
I mean, you're right. At this point, like we've been memeing it and things like that, but they're not a CCT right now, right? They are not a championship caliber team when they're having to contend with these extreme teams up at the very top that are so consistent, that are able to take every single fight and usually come out on top against some of these teams in this lobby. So it's been a rude wake-up call for Western Europe, but it's one that they need, because if you want to be a CCT, you've got to be able to step up big.
I mean, the ultimate goal, right, is to get to PMGC and to win PMGC. And right now, you know, TJB isn't in a state to compete with the PMGC teams. They weren't even in a state before to compete against the PMWI teams, if we remember just a few weeks ago. So definitely need to see some step up out of them. But then again, we need to see a step up out of quite a few teams as well. But let's just get straight into what's coming up today here. Let's take a look at our schedule for the day and remind you guys what Battlegrounds will be coming up in what order. Remember, we have 5 matches every single day. And today will be the double Erangel and the double Miramar, with only one Sandhawk in the middle. And of course, the next 2 days we'll be seeing double Sandhawk with the difference between double Miramars and double Erangels as well. So this is really, I guess, like the best way to start a phase as well, or a second half of a phase. Double Erangel, double Miramar gets you really comfortable. But you know it's not comfortable? These talent quizzes. I'm not feeling comfortable about today's questions. Take a look at what it's going to be, because you know what? Max is very sensitive about things like this. Well, not the oldest part, but about height. We're not talking about Reznov. And the question is, he's the shortest, well, I guess the statement is the shortest guy on the team, but also the oldest.
I went with no.
Max, speaking about short people, Mr. 185.
Okay. 185 is okay. Do not judge me for 185. 185 is a normal height, actually above average. And I went with no because I know Icy has only been able to start playing competitive since spring of this year. He's 16, 17, so he's very young, and I think he's still growing. So I would say Icy is potentially the shortest. So no, it is not Reznov.
Well, you know what, Max? You could have just said, well, at PMWI, Jason, it's on a box.
It's not an option.
You know what? I like how you don't put other people on blast. Yeah, Clarence, what do you think?
It's all right to be short, because when you get on the airplane, Jason, my knees don't hurt. Let's put it that way, all right? But I've gone with yes, because it's a pure guess. I have no
I was expecting something. I don't know.
You know, it's a funny thing, Clarence. I went with yes as well because of no reason. So let's actually see what the correct answer is going to be here. I'm expecting Max to probably get the point because he had
No! I had a theory behind it and everything. I backed my thesis. How can you? Oh my god.
Fantastic.
You go from Max said, yeah, well, you know, just started playing recently and he's young, so he probably still has room to grow, blah, blah, blah. And you go to Colaris and myself saying, yeah, we don't know.
That is it. That is it.
I'm just going to go in blind next time and just like, I don't know. No. Okay.
Smart.
It's okay, Max. We still love you, even if you get predictions incorrectly, because you're awesome to be around. You know, it's also awesome to be around our 2 commentators. John and Blank, we're going to take you into our first match of the day.
There we are. We are getting into game number 1. I'm joined by Blank, of course. We're going to be taking a look at the second half of the last phase of League play, Blank.
We are indeed. I'm sorry, my eyes look like I've been crying. I've just done a massive yawn, so I apologise for that. I like the Colaris is coming here looking like the cool substitute teacher at the moment as well, with that new haircut and the fresh beard trim. But yeah, heading over towards Erangel now, and you're right, we are heading into that final phase before finals itself. There's a lot of finals coming through here, and it really is the final chance for some of these teams to really step it up. And I think that when we're looking at some of the standings, there are some teams down towards the bottom where it just looks impossible at this moment in time. However, the key thing right now is even if it's impossible for some of those teams towards the bottom to jump all the way up, other than a short few, there is still that chance for these teams to head up towards the top of the rankings. MADBULLS, VIRTUS.PRO, Na'Vi, they try and take over to MUERTE if they can't hold on to that spot in number 1 and get those additional final points, those bonus points that are going to assist you greatly when you want to try and hit out and take that number 1 spot coming through on the finals when it does come through very, very shortly.
Will be a mad dash on the overalls at this point. It's going to be really close for the bonuses going into the finals. It's all to play for, and not only that, it's qualification spots up for grabs. So we're going to be keeping an eye on those crucial teams, but I'll tell you what isn't really crucial at the moment. It seems like the MVP title might have already been decided, Blank. Effect is on a tear. This guy cannot be stopped. I'm surprised that GK First is keeping up a damage, but I think that's just from this phase.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the previous games that TJB were able to have, and they were absolutely dominating, but I think a lot of that, as the desk has so aptly put it, is a lot of it is down to GK First. He is really pulling the massive weight of his team behind him with a very strong rope, I would imagine, because that team does tend to be needing to be led around quite a bit by GK First. Still doing fantastic work for the team, and TJB starting to look a lot more like a unit, like a team that can play together, but it's coming through a little bit too late. And this is how we have seen it throughout the majority of the seasons, majority of our splits. And I think Imperium, when he was casting, definitely put it a very good way, because every single week he would say to me, look man, I still believe in TJB, I still think they're coming back. And sometimes I wouldn't agree with him, but he was tended to be quite right a lot of times, and it was too little too late a lot of the times by the time they got into gear, by the time they got into action, but they got around to it eventually, and that's happening here in phase 3.
Well, this is not a terrible time for it to happen as well, right? If you had to have a down period and then come back in a little bit stronger, it is good to come into the finals or towards the finals looking a little bit stronger. It is unfortunate that they will lack a lot of bonus points, and that might take the wind out of their sails slightly moving forwards, but they have that momentum, and that can carry you and do you wonders if you play your cards right. A couple of players not having correct cards played at the start of this game, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, they're back on the road again, though. Shockwave, they get away, they don't take too much damage. I mean, they will have to heal one of those players back up, but you make a good point there in terms of the bonus points. That has shifted the dynamic of these finals around quite a bit. And, you know, speaking of TJB, it's actually a great team to talk about in that sense, because as the wise Imperium did say, they were coming back. It's going to happen eventually, and it did happen eventually. And this would be a team that come into finals, and they do some really good work, right? And they would get high on the ranking and often secure themselves a spot towards a regional, towards a championship, and that was absolutely fine. But here, because we would often say, right, it's fine for TJB, they're going to chill, they're going to relax, and then in finals they'll bring out the big guns. That can't happen anymore because of those bonus points. If you're not consistent in the league stage, you are not going to have the greatest of finals in your favor. So it's nice that we're rewarding these consistent teams like MADBULLS, like VIRTUS.PRO, and like PIONER.
And they will be able to dine out on that for at least the first couple of days of finals, but you can't... Well, I say the first couple of days, it's not entirely that long, but it's something that you can't rest on, though, which is good news for the teams below, because it means that if you're hungry enough, you can sweep the feast, get the chicken dinners that you want, but it's going to be a little bit harder. Death Machine, currently not seemingly having the best of times overall. I mean, their first phase was a lot stronger, and they got a whole bunch of bonus points for finishing so far up, but they dropped down, finished 19th last week. They're currently in 18th position this week. It seems like this is a team that fell off fairly hard after what seemed to be a fairly solid first phase.
Yeah, it was an okay first phase, and they got a lot of their work done on Miramar. And if we go all the way back to phase 1, it was a lot of the times where they would get that circle blessed. They would have decent positions within the middle of the circle would come over towards them, then they'd have a compound, and they would run it from there. Right now, they're still locked in this horrible Picardo conflict with Arabian champions. But looking at their scores, it really is quite crazy. 229 points in phase 1. So let's just take that as a starter. 229 points in phase 1. Now on the overall leaderboard, including all of the phases, 345. So only 120 points scored over phase 2 and phase 3. It is quite horrendous, right? That is not good.
Yeah, the 126. I mean, they do still have the next half of this phase to try and add it up, but you're right, they have scored less so far in both phase 2 and phase 3 combined than in phase 1 overall. Definitely a downswing team, which is not the best. But I think we could look at the flip side and look at the rise of MUERTE, right? Like, this is a team that has absolutely risen. I mean, it's finished first phase 11th place. They moved up to 4th, and they kind of impressed us there. But this phase, they have really started to pull their thumb out, and 4 chicken dinners on the board, first place overall, 152 points. They're not playing in this game, unfortunately. We'll see them in the last 4 games of today, but they have been fragging out. They have vastly improved.
Yeah, it's really good, steady improvement between the phases, which is great to see. And I think that a lot of that confidence came through from that final game before Livik in phase 1, right? Where we saw them just go absolutely ham towards that Sandhawk and pull their healer out of the circle, take down NEXUS, who they were challenging to grab that Livik game. which is really, really cool. And I think from there, they realized their strength on Sandhawk and decided to just run with that. And they have been super consistent on that map as a whole, and that is working out well for them. So they continue with that streak. They look like they're getting stronger and stronger on Erangel and Miramar combined. I think it's going to be a team that some of the guys that weren't expecting them to do so well or weren't expecting them to be such a contender come finals will now have to really look out for and prepare for.
Speaking of consistency, I mean, you kind of mentioned it there on certain maps. I'm going to be looking at the second half of this phase, but a lot of Pioneer, really, because they finished third, second. They're currently top of the tables in terms of bonus points. If you close the tables out now, it's a little bit different. But they're 8th place so far. Their gap up to second place, let's say, on 140. Oh, let's talk about their gap up to first place. Right now, it's under 50 points. So in the second half of this phase, they need to improve 50 points over MUERTE. And with 12 games to do that, they have to break that down to an improvement of, what is that, around 4 or 5 points a game, right? Over MUERTE on average for the remainder of this phase, which is a really, really tall order. But I think that they can reasonably expect to jump up maybe and contest towards 5th, maybe 4th, if they have a good second half of this phase. And with the bonus points that they've managed to find, they're looking pretty good for these finals.
Absolutely, and I think that if we look at the way that the circle has changed over the phases, because if you're at home and you've been watching a lot of PUBG Mobile, you will realize that the way teams play the circle just changes slowly but surely. Teams will slowly come towards the center. People will start realizing the center is extremely clumped. Teams will start to slowly spread back out towards the edge of the circle. So you kind of have this motion of just in and then out and then in again, but it happens slowly over time. And I think Pioneer's been caught out by this, in which case we're now in more of an edge-centric circle in terms of all these teams, where Pioneer is not able to get those cheeky flanks in on the western side of the circle anymore, or wherever they want to come in. Usually they're often posted up with many teams around them. They're not able to play the circle how they would usually like it, which is getting a very strong position early on and then running from that. And then with a lot of the hardships we saw in the beginning of phase 3, that has also really hampered them, because I think they're a team that likes to plant the flag and then play from that position. But when the circle moves away drastically, as it has done before for them, they're not able to really push through. And now with the edge play that's coming in, they're not able to even take that central spot that guarantees them more position in the circle. If we look at them right now, they're coming into conflict with Death Machine soon, and if they can clear that from that northwest side, that'll give them a lot of space here at Erangel.
Yeah, it could open a lot of doors from them to play how they like. It's easier said than done. They're still as 4, they've got a lot of vehicles, and it's still early doors on the game. At the moment, Death Machine not really rotating towards them for now. Seems like they're more preoccupied in their compound a little bit further north. Perhaps they want to stay towards the edge for a little bit longer. Seems like they're not in a hurry to move.
I think that they maybe came down, saw Pioneer, who right now are quite visible, I would say, on that side, and just thought better of it. I think this is a team that realizes that, you know, now things do hang in the balance a little bit for them in terms of those point scorings. And teams underneath them are starting to catch up a little bit. You know, you got ARB and Team Doom have had a drastic improvement in this phase 3. Who are now starting to catch up to them. They're not quite on the heels as of yet, but they can definitely see them chasing from behind. And it's point in time for Death Machine, where they've had so many unfortunate just dropouts early in these circles. Now it's just a case of safety might be the best bet for them a lot of times. If that means moving away from a team that's found themselves into the circle a little bit sooner than them, I don't mind that. They've been caught out with 1 or 2 players going down and then just slowly bleeding out as the match continues. Eastern Stars here coming up versus Shockwave, one of our OG European teams, I would say. They have got a lot better, John, but I don't think it's quite 100% yet. Not to the same caliber we saw from phase 1, but I think they are starting to fix things slowly but surely.
Shockwave at the moment with Hakoni down on the front against Eastern Stars. Bleeding out fairly quickly. And not really likely that you can reposition in time for this. Trazen does have a sneaky little off angle, but that has been spotted and is currently being fought over by Keme. Seco will have to make a really, really dangerous run to make this one work. You can see Eastern Stars popping that smoke, forcing Trazen to reposition, isolating that angle, giving them a little bit of freedom. But I don't think they're going to be able to stop the push should it come through. Unfortunately, Seco doesn't have the confidence to go through that. They don't have the information, and they lose a player for Shockwave.
Yeah, for Eastern Stars, they didn't want to push their luck here. They've got 2 players behind currently holding, so waiting for that player to bleed out and just holding the angles there will give them a little bit more room to play with going forward. For Shockwave, as they are further in towards the circle on that northern side, for Eastern Stars right now, it's just slowly carving themselves a path into this circle itself. Soon going to see the shift, and we'll see exactly where it does go. Right now, there is a few places that would be unfortunate to head down towards. We've seen a lot of MUERTE finishes recently that swing out towards that west side, but instead, we're ready with a very hard shift down towards that southwest, in which case, MADBULLS, they've often played this coastal side, grabbed that high ground early. There's extremely prominent compound. You can see where effect and skills are playing, which gives them nice little cover towards their western side, and they can also see out all towards the teams on the east, but you can see they're all coming in thick and fast. So MADBULLS will have to figure this out quickly.
On the south side is where the most of the danger lies. Beg for mercy. Already having fallen, though. Leaves that a little bit less dangerous. XTEAM yet to really find their feet in the lobby. We've seen things from them in the past that would imply potential, but it just has not been realized here in Western Europe in the PMPL. Seems like they are going to really, really struggle to launch themselves from the bottom of these tables.
Yeah, the skill level from XTEAM, I honestly wouldn't call them a terrible team at all, because the rotates tend to be quite nice. They catch teams off guard quite often with nasty little flanks and sneaky plays. However, when it comes to an all-out gunfight between players, I think that they are quite far below a lot of these other teams within the lobby. And with their rotational paths, they go through some very tough teams almost every single game.
All right, everything seemingly popping off right now as QODEX, Shockwave on the hillsides. They already lost to Coney earlier, Terminus and Trazen both down. Now it's just Seco's sliver of HP. In the background, you've got VIRTUS.PRO trying to move past RUTHLESS eSports, so I think are taking another fight. In the meantime, it is all going on right now on this northeastern side of the next circle. The hard shift is punishing these teams, Blank.
Absolutely. A lot of these teams were prepared for a shelter finish, and there's not a lot of space here anyway. So when you're rotating through this position, you're more than likely going to hit into a fair few other teams. Potato Hill's kind of out of the cards, out of the question, because no one really wants to head up there anymore. It's on that north side. Game Lord also struggling as they're coming down from Yasnaya. We'll see exactly how they are able to rotate in.
MADBULLS holding out in their end of the deal right now. Pioneer, pretty safe and sound in a northern compound, but Team Doom under threat, under siege right now from 4 Romanian men. DPS on the staircase, this is dangerous. They will need to put a nade in here to really give them a fighting chance of repositioning at an advantage. Alawi knows that. He's going to put that one through, and it's right on the money. Perfectly executed there. Push up, get that spray. No one to back it up and refrag for Team Doom as it's just Frosty alive, hiding out in the corner. They know that it isn't a complete clean team wipe, because that wasn't a clean flush there, and Frosty, the insurgent in the building.
One of the first times we've also seen Unicorns of Love be able to really pull out some big guns in that action on the southeast side. A lot of times they'll come into the circle and it'll be a desperate push from a hard shift like that, in which case they'll lose one player and not able to quite finish out the game. Another shift up towards that northeast side will leave MADBULLS having to push through the players of VP. Luckily for them, VP lost a player on the rotate there, so will not be that hard of a competition to push through. However, they do have precedent on the circle, so MADBULLS will be looking for any kind of knock they can grab, and then after that, it will be clean pickings.
Frosty goes for a bold play through the smoke and finds one. Alawi down and out in the blue as well. No first aids for Frosty. Trying to loot his friend, but there's no first aids there either. Scrambling around for these meds. Wants to spray around the side, but Rana, will he be able to survive? Has bandages, has full boosters, but he vaults the window instead. And will go down. Disaster strikes from top. Frosty takes out 4 Romanian men.
Team Doom, but they'll only get a singular point for that play as well. So for Team Doom, who are chasing Death Machine at the moment, that is fairly unfortunate with the position that they were able to hold for a long, long while there. Luckily, two teams go out on that edge, which leaves things a little bit more bare for Unicorns of Love and Nexus to move in from that southeast side. TJB taking their split towards the center at the moment. So we'll see if TJB can continue the kind of performance that was showing us from the beginning of phase 1 and lead it into this one. So hopefully they can get some more bonus points on board in this phase.
VIRTUS.PRO with 3, guarding out MADBULLS. Sat on 4, top to bottom on the compound. MADBULLS will need to descend. I think VIRTUS.PRO know that. No angles being given away, not just yet. MADBULLS hesitant to make this push, but Blue Zone will crunch fairly soon.
Yeah, this is one thing that MADBULLS are extremely good at, and I think VP is also aware of this. It's probably one of the only teams that would be able to get here fast enough, so I'm assuming that VP will know of this. And with it being so central, taking these edge compounds here was intelligent, because you know the rest of the MADBULLS are going to be holding on that backside. You don't want 2 members up front, because it's very easy to crash onto 2, take them out, whilst the angles aren't covered from the rest of the team. So VP makes a very smart rotation here, and also realizes that MADBULLS, if they get the peak, if they can see them, you're more than likely going to take a knock. So Tulika just gets a little bit greedy there. I think waiting as they were doing beforehand was the better play, and now MADBULLS are going to instantly execute. This is very classic.
Res did come through for fairly quickly there. Tulika is back, looking for the heal, but there's a re-knock with skills with a Molotov around the side. And they're not really going to be able to get the spray down the staircase as well. Corker not really able to execute on that one. Old boy across the way, trying to suppress these pushes, but it's not really going that well right now. Low HP for Corker still. They move through. Skills, Effect is seen through, and they push up out onto the balcony. Skills makes the dash, but Corker pushes into the side room, and now Skills needs to descend, but he's dropped out. Corker around the outside of the building, trying to give them the swivel, trying to give them the old run around, but it's not going to work. MADBULLS are on the money. Effect down, but Resable, Pioneer move past them on the northern side.
Monkey realizes he has to instantly hit that med kit because they need them at full force right now to defend versus Pioneer, who are taking shots down, but realize that MADBULLS are kind of in the rough right now. They're in the swamp. They're not leaving here anytime soon. So in the meantime, Pioneer can try and get ahead. Ruthless are in front, though, with a nice compound. The Pioneer might want to challenge, but now with that circle, Ruthless will be 100% scouting outside them. Knowing that the teams might be coming their way, this is forcing TJB to leave. XTEAM has to push their way through Arabian Champions, but this is a fantastic spot for Ruthless Esports. Nice high ground, good compounds to defend with lots of different angles, so we're going to be quite difficult now for any team to really assault them. However, we've seen many, many times Ruthless Esports just fall over to a single crash.
Pioneer having to use those vehicles as cover on that hillside. It is broad to the MADBULLS right now on their push. With everyone else looking their way, they might not be so lucky. Death Machine up the top. Mesa goes down. The push from the east from Game Lord. Potential to prove troublesome, but the northern side is far from safe. Neset still taking punishment there. Smoke does bloom and answers towards Narvalo, but he lands those shots. Double headshot there over onto Hamodi. Knocks him fairly instantly. There is a res available very, very close by. And Pioneer are given a little bit of respite.
Yeah, great crosshair placement there from Narvalo. Gives only the tiniest peek of his body as well, but just watches that singular angle on the window that has been isolated. Instantly gets the knock on them. Now Death Machine are in a tricky spot. Akashi going down behind for Game Lord. It's really bad though, John.
Yeah, it's far from ideal. That is their backstop there. Points for the rear guard. Unicorns of Love might be able to exploit that, move forwards into it. With the Kashi going down, that's what they're going to try and do. Crypto running on into the fight now. They're starting to engage here. Crypto spotted. Unfortunately for Unicorns, they're on the longer side of the blue zone, which means that their fight is on more of a timer than Game Lords. And they will have to move first. Eastern Stars, with Bazzi down, are going to have sideswipe onto this fight as well. They've yet to move, but they are further in towards this next zone. Bazzi is resable, but they're going to need to make a run for the Eastern Stars out west. Unicorns of Love down.
Crypto is just saddle out there, to be honest with you. There's nothing much else he can do. And I think for them, they were worried about pushing through TJB's position, seeing a lot of damage go their way. And in this case, they move up towards the north, but that little brief moment of indecision does just leave them out in the cold. Again, it's a hard shift. It's difficult to predict, difficult to follow up on. Game Lord lose Akashi, but now look down towards Eastern Stars. There's a double knock coming through.
Ooh, Bazzi almost immediately flushed the teammate as well. Gabala, in fact, goes the full Monty, and Keme soon to follow. Eastern Stars torn up in the field. Game Lord back on the deck, healing up.
Victor has to just slip away from that one. TJB have eyes on, have moved away from that compound, did a really good job down towards Nexus on that south side to hold out, but there's teams absolutely everywhere.
Modi, I mean, that was a bit bold there. Modi goes down to Pioneer. There's a knockover towards Ruthless Esports as well, which allows Pioneer themselves a little bit of time, but they do not have the circle go their way. It goes up, it keeps some of Ruthless's high top position in the next zone. This is really strong for them, and Pioneer are going to have to make this push.
MADBULLS waiting in the wings though, saw that shift and instantly moved on it. They've headed down towards that southeast side where they can watch the roads and take a little bit of a ditch, and this shack as well to play around with. 6 eliminations so far, a very, very good spot for MADBULLS, and a quick move as well whilst the teams were fighting and a few knocks went through on the elimination feed. So really, really good timing from MADBULLS to make that one happen. Nades down towards Pioneer right now, and Nano hits an absolutely nasty one over towards Fash.
Zumitsu close by, tries to put another in the same place for Nano, and I think it might do the job. No, just a little bit long, maybe the other side of the rock there. Havlik pops out another smoke. They're falling back, they're trying to play the headland, but they're worried, and rightly so. ARB descending across the way. They clap eyes on each other, but they don't want to take this engagement. Havlik trying to trade blows as they force this res on out. Zumitsu timing it through. Looks like they will be allowed to do so. Another smoke pushed forwards allows Ruthless a little bit more cover. They want this fight seemingly downhill. Sprays over towards Havlik. It will be pushed in by the zone on this position, but there's a side swipe from these two players, and there's the nade. Izumitsu is there. Nano Baby opens the door for something to happen. A close nade as well, followed up by a long. Ulysses is low on half. Pocus out wide on the left. Izumitsu pivotal on this push. Needs to win the challenge. Pocus under fire, will hit the deck. DBS in hand, waiting for these ridge lines to be passed, and Ruthless back it up to the buildings.
Some great nades there, but honestly, a lot of that is successful because of Havlik. He has angles on them, can see them through third party, so allows the rest of his team to line up the nades with the information that he's giving back. So very, very aggressive push there coming through from the guys of Pioneer to make that one happen. Now, TJB, with currently the most eliminations in the lobby, looking to take this off from Ruthless Esports.
Gonna have to try hard on that with Salazar with the DBS on the inside. Drop shot and the spin is good, and the push in from the other side is there. They lose Lin on the push, but Ruthless now have so much to deal with, and they cannot stand the test. TJB lose a player, and Pioneer now facing off against TJB instead, as the position has been usurped.
Incredibly aggressive play from TJB. Notice the fighting, and then come up on the backside, isolating the two angles. The move, but it's a nice nade for the window from Izumitsu. They just got the refresh from the bodies that they were finding from Ruthless Esports and continue to toss these ones in. GK first, extremely low as well, and that will find him just on the side of that nade. He was so low.
Now just Xiao jumping in and out through the smoke, and it's easy pickings for Izumitsu. These nades from Pioneer have been so strong. They take the high ground position, and now it's the MADBULLS that's the only threat.
For Pioneer, they had to act fast, and they do. Havlik finds Monkey as he peeks up to try and take down the remaining players from Arabian Champions. They're stuck on the other side of that road, and perhaps Pioneer can get there first, but they will have to open themselves up. 2 angles from MADBULLS if they want to head downwards.
Well, they're still going. Sure, he's only a solo, but can he outlast the team fight outside of the circle? Unlikely, and I think there was a Molotov going in, and it should...
Are you joking?
That's... I mean, that is... Wait, is he not?
It's just behind him.
Oh my goodness me. How on earth does that not tickle him? Goodness.
There's a really good Molotov as well. More shots, though, as the rest of Pioneer look to keep MADBULLS at bay. Effect moves up and leads the charge.
Forward position. Well, they cannot challenge this. Can't step up for Havlik's off angle. Actually, Effect might be trying to deal with it himself. Would they position known? It seems like Effect knows exactly the lay of the land. This is great information for MADBULLS to have. They know this off angle. They know the solo threat. They have complete control over the information.
They were taking down Arabian Champions' position beforehand. I think for effect, they'd love to get rid of this player early so they can start focusing on Pioneer. In the meantime, Pioneer, Havlik, I think maybe needs to start thinking about moving off towards that eastern side where the rest of this team has posted up. Huge amount of smokes now employed from MADBULLS to finish off the game. This is very, very MADBULL-esque as well, saving a lot of these smokes to disorientate and confuse the opponents that are in front of them so they can take a lot of different angles. And with 4 players, this is the exact kind of play that you need. Getting all these players into different positions that perhaps Pioneer aren't expecting this late in the game, you lose a lot of information.
Havlik needs to reposition now, and Effect will spot it out. They throw the smokes, discombobulate. Effect on the off, moving in for the side swipe. Confusion in the Pioneer camp up top, and MADBULLS will strike with they eliminated in the meantime. 1 player down, but Izumitsu still out and forward. Skills by the tree. Will he have spotted it? Fash is there as well. They're using that cover to their advantage as well. Out in the grass, spotted. Last player's there. Skills will not go down either. It's 4v1 for the MADBULLS, and in the open field they challenge. Izumitsu falls, and the MADBULLS move up the hill. Pioneer swept aside.
Looks like they learned from their games on Miramar how to push those positions on the top side, dropping the smokes all over the place and being cautious of it that time, which was much, much better. Send 2 up, get the refrags, have the other 2 on off angles, and slowly but surely they just mutilated the guys from Pioneer. You have to admit though, Pioneer getting a fair way into that game with some rather bad positioning as well in a few places there, so great stuff from them to actually be able to make that one happen. And honestly, I'm very, very happy with how that game turned out, because MADBULLS from that western side, you know, they move through XTEAM so many times and are able to get into decent positions. From there, they waited it out, bided their time, and VP were just no problem to them because their executes are so clean.
I mean, they seemed to just know everything about these circles as well. Their information gathering is admirable for the MADBULLS, and you'd expect nothing less from a team that has had no fewer than 4 chicken dinners per phase so far. They're trying to add to that tally now, obviously. That brings them up to 2 in total. Will they be able to get 2 more in the second half of the phase? Only time will tell, but we're going back over to the desk.
I actually had a call with Time earlier today. They told me, Jason, don't be late, but also that MADBULLS will indeed get at least 2 more chicken dinners throughout this phase. MADBULLS, I mean, our predictions were terrible, but I think that's what we get for doubting MADBULLS. But Max, to be fair, at the time when predictions to be had, it was MADBULLS up against VIRTUS.PRO in a 4-on-4, and they had to push into VP to make it more difficult.
In a fight like that, 4v4, even if they just lose a single player, their odds of a chicken dinner go down significantly, because there was a lot of 4-man teams around them, like actually inside the circle, outside of course, MADBULLS and also VP. So a single player lost, that chicken dinner not happening. But MADBULLS, doesn't matter if when it comes to macro, doesn't matter if it comes to fighting, they take them so clean and so quickly, and then they just eliminate the entire team. I think 1 player or 2 gets knocked, instantly get the res, boom, back into action, ready to move on the next circle shift. The speed at which they do things and how good the moves are themselves is just so impressive, and the reason why they're so consistent every phase here, Kalaris.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, it's not just impressive that they beat VP so handedly against them in the compound. It's the fact that, as you say, when they're making the macro decisions, they are swift and they are decisive. Even if you look at the position when they're on the far west side of a circle, and then they realize, okay, well, we know nobody else is here. The circle shifts, they instantly send through to the other side of the circle because they know no teams are going to be backfilling them. They look to try and hold teams out on the other side, take an important dip. They are so clean right now, our MADBULLS, when they're making these decisions. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just how they read the circle. They know how teams are going to answer to these circles. We had hard shift to the east and over to the west. They're like, we're just going to serve as the natural barrier over to the western side. And then no team's going to be entering from that position, also because not many teams really drop to the west of that circle. And then we're just going to slowly enter that position. We already scouted because we had that high ground elevation. We know where teams are already positioned in that late game circle. So there's no reason to wait, right? You have the information, you see where the circle's going. Boom, snap of a finger, you're already in position. You already still have 4 players alive. The chicken dinner is just not going away from you. So they know how to put their foothold on that circle to make sure that it's just not going to go against them.
I mean, Max, let's be honest. MADBULLS are the hard shift. Wherever they go, if you go into the area, you're eventually going to be eliminated. And they just made their decision. Every time we get MADBULLS, top of the leaderboards.
This is you, isn't it, Max?
Yes, it is.
Max.
Yes.
Liked by Maxman Casts.
Oh no, you see? Oh no, I didn't think you'd see that.
shameless.
No. I didn't think we were going to show that. Oh wow. Okay. But you gotta like what you create, right? So.
Yes. I made this. Thumbs up for me. Okay, cool.
I don't.
It could have been worse. He could have like secretly put in his handle somewhere,
like a semi-transparent one.
Like, follow me on Instagram.
I feel exposed. What's going on there?
That's amazing.
You should feel exposed. That's so unprofessional of you. I'm just gonna keep waiting.
Please don't
silence,
make it worse.
just to make you feel worse.
We can just have a chat if you want, Max.
Yeah, sure. Okay, it's good.
Let's take a look at MADBULLS player stats though in this last match here, because the amount of limbs they had. Maybe we'll see Max Ben likes this as well when we see the graphic come up, because you know what? Who doesn't like this? As Zerich puts down 964 damage, and the limbs across the board. I mean, 4-4-3-3.
That's so good. I'm gonna give it a heart. Yes, Zerish and Effect doing really good, like the fracking duo, as always, no surprise. But Monkey in particular actually was very, very offensive. Actually, I would say on par with what Effect and Zerish would do in this game. He was really just right close to them, going for the push, trying to get that finish onto Pioneer's spot. So yeah, it goes to show even the support players that are not really going to be fragging on the level of Zerish and Effect, if they have to frag out, they can get like 3 limbs apiece. So yeah, even Zerish and Effect are not the two only main fraggers of the team. Like, they will follow up as an entire squad if needed.
All right, well, you see MADBULLS performing well. TJB still did decently well, which is your pick, Colaris. And we need to dive into their player stats to see if, again, anyone besides GK First is able to step up here, because that's the one thing we'll need to see out of TJB to push them to their next level. I mean, we'll see. There we go.
Not bad at all. Zhao, actually, we already noticed too, he's the player with the longest elimination in 399 meters coming in from the previous games. And I think we posed a question at the beginning of the day, does TJB step up on the other battlegrounds that aren't Sandhawk? This is a good little start to that. They had a decent position to play with. I was cautious as to whether or not to pick them, because sometimes TJB has a tendency of not performing that well, but they had a good spot, and I liked the rotation north. Even though they got eliminated by Pioneer, I think that if they were to push up on MADBULLS' position, that would have been catastrophic. So they looked for alternate angles, and if Pioneer is not there in the force that they were, it could have been a very strong move by TJB.
Yeah, it creates a little bit of hope for the entirety of the team. We talked about GK First being there solo. We've seen another player step up in this game. Hopefully is going to translate in the other games followed by that. And I think they were just a lot more decisive and willing to create space around him. Like, they seemed a lot more aggressive, which we saw in the past they were not willing to do. So I think these are changes for the best, and they know that this is like the last few days before they make into the finals, so they can get as many points as possible, create as much of a lead as they possibly can, so they actually have a live-in chance to make in the championship. So if it's the time to step up, we saw it last season, it is now, and it seems like they're pulling the TJB special in some way.
You know, thinking about how teams have been playing things out in terms of like what they can and can't do, I feel like we haven't seen teams like, for instance, TJB, they got the zone decently well. Colaris, you picked it because of the position that they had within the zone. It shifts away from them, and they have to kind of like fight an uphill battle. But it seems like, you know, MADBULLS compared to them, MADBULLS, doesn't matter where the zone goes, they're always going to make the right decision, always get into the zone correctly, and still fight their way out of it from there. And it feels like teams haven't been able, I can't really think of another team off the top of my head that is able to just deal with hardships as well as MADBULLS has been able to.
The thing is, I'm trying to think, because none do on the level of MADBULLS in some ways.
They look so clean, even against the other CIS teams as well. They look so clean, and it's not just, again, just 2 players kind of ruling the roost. And we know that Zerich and Effect are doing so well in terms of the numbers, but you saw it just in this game as well. The fact that the other boys around them, they're able to hold down the fort. They are a complete full building. It's not just the foundation. They are the full building on top of them foundations here, Jason.
And the reason I bring that up as well, by the way, is just the fact that you were talking about how Na'Vi already did exceptionally well at PMGD last year, Colaris. And now we see MADBULLS able to kind of be better than Na'Vi. I think none of us can really disagree with that statement. So the question is, like, how good they are reading rotations and rotating for themselves and putting themselves in good positions. Is this going to be the team that
we're having an interesting chat, right? And I'll talk for you, Max, as well here, because you were saying you'd love to see MADBULLS at PMGC and kind of employ these strategies and use them where they can. And I think that, as you say, the fact that CIS has already been able to claim a 2nd place at PMGC bodes well, considering that these teams can stack up against the likes of Na'Vi here to be able to push them forward. So if they do get there, amazing, but we'll see.
Yeah, a little bit of time to get there, but they still are looking fantastic. Like an ALT, a CCT. Let's head over to J&B with John Allen and Blake.
Cheers, JJNM. We're going into game number 2. It's Miramar. Of course, we're going over to the desert. We had a classic game of PUBG Mobile from MADBULLS. They played it absolutely perfectly, I would say. I don't think they put a toe out of line, no howlers for them. We're going to be going into Miramar, seeing if they can repeat that process.
Yeah, I mean, for MADBULLS, I think it's that timing that really comes into effect a lot of times, right? Where they're able to make those moves when it feels appropriate, when there's a lot going on, when teams don't expect it. And making those moves as a team, as a unit, seems to be the really, really big thing. And then towards that end game, Effect kind of takes control of the team, and then they just follow his lead, which works out really well. And with Zerish being able to find these cheeky knocks all over the place, obviously topping the meters over there for MADBULLS in that last game, that's when things start to get really, really nice for that team as well, because a lot of those players are very, very good. Effect is very strong when it comes to, you know, making those big clutch plays. But when you start seeing Zerish stepping up as well, like, you are really struggling, because a lot of times when teams coming into those engagements, you know, if you know it's MADBULLS, you're thinking, right, we've got to watch out for Effect, we've got to watch out for those off angles. Suddenly, you know, Skills, Monkey, and Zerish are also huge contenders. Like, it's hard to deal with this team because they really are a handful.
It can be all too much. And I mean, there's a reason that these guys are so far at the top of the overalls. It's because they play like that. Unfortunately, for the rest of the teams in the lobby, they're going to have to all compete against that and see what they can eke out of this. And I think as well, you could look at Pioneer as well. I said last game, I wanted to see what they could do. They've been very, very consistent, probably the second most consistent team, I would say, after MADBULLS. And I mean, maybe VIRTUS.PRO coming through as well, although their second phase was potentially less strong, but I mean, they have kept it all up. But I think Pioneer, for me, is a team that I'm really going to continue to watch. As I said, last game, they did very, very well. It felt like they played quite nicely in those final circles. They did lose a player early, but I liked it. I liked it from Pioneer. We'll see what they can do here.
I mean, for VP, one thing that they really struggle with a lot of times is these elimination points, right? From phase 2 to phase 3, this is still becoming a bit of a problem for them, in which case these fights aren't going so well. The rotations are good and they're able to put up points where they can, but when it comes to that full-on brawl, they just don't seem as strong as we'd hope to see other teams. I mean, they're still doing very good with this, despite the playstyle being super passive sometimes. I mean, you look at just look at phase 2, for example, 152 points. Now, this is tied with a lot of good teams in the lobby. Na'Vi, only 4 more placement points with them with 156. However, 147 elimination points for Na'Vi compared to VIRTUS.PRO's 99, which is a real outlier within that top 5 bracket. And then you look over here in phase 3, 89 elimination points for MADBULLS. Now, that's an outlier in itself. 58 for MUERTE, 73 for TJB. Go down to 5th place, 61 for Na'Vi, 6th place Eastern Stars, 61. You look at 4th place VIRTUS.PRO, 98 placement points, higher than anyone else in the lobby right now, but 43 elimination points. They are really lagging when it comes to these team fights.
Do need to step it up, and maybe that's the story that we're seeing, is that a lot of these strong teams kind of maybe don't have the power in the fight, but MADBULLS just like saying, actually, you know what? Let's do both. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, most teams here are looking pretty good when it comes to being able to get the elimination points as well as the consistent placement points. It really is just VIRTUS.PRO who looks strange in this upper bracket of teams who are able to make it through each single phase and get a high placing. These elimination points will come back to bite you, though, later on, because sometimes that's all that lies between you and taking up a 3rd, a 2nd, or a 1st and jumping up. When it comes to those last games, yes, you can grab a 1st place. It's not always likely that you're able to consistently get that chicken dinner, but what you can consistently get is those elimination points. And if it's a case of, you know, you're 4 points behind, you're unsure whether you're going to get that 1st place there, you do need to really pull up those elimination points as well. And from elimination points, you get chicken dinners. And we see that with MADBULLS all the time, where they take control of these circles and are able to find some good third parties and make it happen from there. TJB, on the other hand, another great team at the moment in phase 3. 3, which I'm really liking the look of. Aggressive, and plays a very different style to most other teams in the lobby, Joe.
Yeah, it seems like they have really turned up the gas and try to keep that pressure on, right? I mean, we saw that in the send that they took in that last game, going up, choosing the right fight, making sure that they were in position. It was unfortunate going down to Pioneer at the end, but you can't win them all, unfortunately. And the right decisions in general earn you more points. And that at the end is really what it's all about. I mean, earn more points, you're going to win, right? So if you're making those clean decisions, those decisions that get you a higher expected value, as it was with that specific push in the last game, even when you lose, you know that you make that decision again, you might win it next time and you might earn a lot more.
Yeah, it's the taking of those positions around the circle, which is when it becomes very important to have that team fighting capability. And I think for TJB, their playstyle has remained the same throughout the entire seasons, right? Throughout most season, it's remained the same. They take aggressive splits across the entirety of the map a lot of times, aggressive splits between buildings. It's very Chinese meta type of deal when you go and watch PEL. Now, none of the other teams in this lobby really play something similar. Yes, you will see teams taking a 2-2 split sometimes when it's necessary, when you want to hold two sides of a road, when you've got two compounds there and you're comfortable to do it. But for TJB, they really do like to take up a lot of space. Now, that doesn't work out so well in Phase 1 and Phase 2, purely off the back because GK First is doing the majority of the work for that team. When you take the